Welcome to Real Love, Real Stories TV and podcast. I am Kanu and I am the host. Join me as I learn about love from couples who are making their relationships work and from singles who make being single fun. Thank you for always tuning in and thank you for your support. So some of you have been asking questions and I listen. So I decided to use this podcast, this episode, as a way for me to answer those questions. Many of you have asked, how did you start the podcast? Why did I start it? And what has the journey been like? And as well, some of you want to know what are some lessons that I have learned doing this podcast and interviewing couples. And also what opportunities have come up and as well what's next. So I'm using this episode to answer those questions, to let you know about all those questions that I just mentioned. So to start, I will start by talking about how did it start? Like how did the idea of Real Love, Real Stories come up? Many of you may know or you may not know, I used to live in Oregon. And in Oregon, it rains a lot. And so being a single person with no family there, I have tons of friends, good, really, really good friends, but no family and not in a relationship. And it rains so much. So as you can imagine, every winter, I started having seasonal affective disorder. And so that's, the lack of sunshine, and you're pretty much stuck in the house because it rains so much. I mean, I would go to work, come back, and hang out with my friends when I could, but at the end of the day, I was at home with a drooly, rainy kind of day. So, then I would go online looking for, they would say that this is dating season. Every winter is dating season. So I would go online trying to find guys. And yeah, I would find guys. I would go on dates, many dates, And so, but it was just so exhausting and I could never find the right one that I felt like would be the one to settle down with or actually start dating seriously. And I went on many, many, many dates. And it ended up being my friends and my family. Sometimes they would end up saying that I'm too picky and I needed to lower down my standards. And I don't know what that really means. I mean, I get it. I understand that. But at the same time, it's like, do you want to settle and end up with somebody that, you're not into, but you're just in a relationship? So I'm not that kind of person. So I decided, you know what, I'd rather be single and I'd rather fight this and just the right one will come. So what I enjoyed doing when I lived in Oregon was, I love coffee and I love people watching. So I'd go to coffee shops and just hang out, whether by myself or with some friends. Usually it would be coffee after running on a Saturday long run, would meet up and then would enjoy a cup of coffee together. So I love people watching and I would often see people coming in, mostly couples. And, they looked happy. They looked like they were in love. But some of them I would look and go, how did you two meet? Like, what's your story, Because they look like they didn't belong, but yet they looked like they were in love. So as the years went by, I was really starting to lose hope. I'm like, why am I single? I am a successful woman. I mean, I have a graduate degree. And, I got the nice car, the nice apartment, the sort of nice life that I had created for myself. And it'll be nice to share with somebody. But yet, I'm still single. And many of my friends were getting married and having babies. And, I am just on the other hand at home alone in a city where I didn't have family, and all that. So it just was like, what am I doing wrong? So then I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is write a book. And, I wanted to write a book about my dating stories because, I went on so many online dates and some funny stories about that. So I was like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to structure it kind of like what Jack Canfield has a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul, but it would be a series of like different dating stories that I have been to or been on. And so, I thought about, okay, I would share stories like how I went on a date and it lasted 7 minutes from start to finish. And then how I went on a date and the guy showed up and he looked like he was high on something. And, guys that I would go on dates with that looked like they were showing off, offering to like fly me somewhere and do this and do that. I'm like, no, I just want a good person. You don't have to like shower me with all these gifts. And also talk about how I got catfished. I would write stories about that. And I thought, okay, people would actually find them funny. I mean, I do. Now that I look back, they are quite funny. But then I thought, okay, I'm not a writer, but I love to talk. And these stories really, they don't give me hope. And I don't think they'll give anybody hope. Yeah, they might give you an idea of, what to do or what not to do. But at the same time, what I really wanted was to find hope and be inspired from something, some sort of something or source. And this was not going to help me with that. So, which leads me to now, I am going to start talking. I'm going to create a podcast. It's called Real Love, Real Stories is what I decided to name it, so that when you look for it, you find the name Real Love, Real Stories. There's no question. You know exactly what it is. So I didn't even know how this was going to play out. So, which leads me to what the journey has been like. This has been the best thing I've created for myself. And I even said when I started, if nobody else listens, I will. I will find hope from these stories because that's what I needed. So, and I didn't even know how I was going to find the people to interview because my podcast is an interview style podcast. I had no idea how I was going to really find the couples. But I have to tell you, I launched the podcast Real Love, Real Stories in June of 2018. And during that time, my family was just going through a really, really horrible time. We lost some pretty significant people in our family. So from June to November, it was just nothing but tears for the entire family. So for me, what kept me going during those difficult times was actually my podcast. No matter where I was, whether I was at the hospital, at the ICU, or I was in Zimbabwe, or I was wherever I was able to either record some of the couples because, I record all of them online for the most part. And so I was able to still connect with the people that were sharing their love stories, and hearing love stories during that very difficult time of my life. I got to tell you, it got me through it, in a way that I cannot even begin to describe. On top of that, all the couples that I've interviewed, I believe I've made friends with them, and we connected mostly on Facebook. And I think that, I've made friends from near and far. And I'm so grateful for the couples, really, for taking that time to share with me and you, the audience, the love stories that they have. So like I said, this has been the best thing that I've created for myself. And, the most important thing is I find hope. And I know a lot of my listeners are finding hope and being inspired as well, which is exactly why I had started to create this podcast. Okay, so what are some of the lessons learned throughout this whole journey, this process? Well, first of all, everyone has a story. You might think that your love story is nothing to write home about, but trust me, somebody will find hope in your story. So what I've learned is love does exist. Because there was a time that I was like, ugh, I am never going to find anybody. Maybe I am one of those people that will end up without any kids, without a husband, poor me, poor me. But love does exist. And love happens when you least expect it. Like absolutely, one of my couples, went on a journey of self-discovery, and she ended up finding her husband through that, while she was taking care of herself and volunteering through Thailand, and she met her husband. So love happens when you least expect it. And sometimes love has always been right in front of us. I've heard people say you always end up with that person who's been in your life and you just didn't know that you're going to end up together. I truly believe this. And I want to share a story here in a little bit. And, sometimes you have to find love online. If you've tried everything, don't give up. Don't lose hope. Maybe try online if you haven't done that. So I've learned that sometimes you have to go online and find love. And I talk to many couples that have gone on dates, met their significant other, ended up getting married online. I mean, I've gone on dates myself online, and I've made some pretty good friends from that too. So, nothing romantic ever happened, but at least I met some really good connections. So don't lose hope. Go online if you have to. So one of my favorite couples that I interviewed, I think episode 7, and this is Sean and Mika. So Mika talked about how she wrote an intention card. You can listen more to that episode to hear her love story, but she wrote an intention card. This is the whole idea about the movie. If you haven't watched it, it's called The Secret, and you can actually find it on YouTube and you watch it for free. So that whole idea about energy flows where attention goes. And they talk about you should tell the universe what you want and the universe will provide, especially if you believe it, that it's going to happen, it will happen. It's the whole idea about positive thinking. So she wrote an intention card and she named it Prince Charming. And then she wrote down all these qualities of what Prince Charming should look like. And 3 weeks later, she met her husband. Now, I'll leave you to listen to that episode to find out more about it. But what I wanted to share about that is I did that for myself. I had done The Secret for so many things in my life, my job, my school, my family, all these things, but never about relationships. So when I interviewed Sean and Mika, I decided to create my own intention card in October of 2018. And I listed on it Mr. Right, and then I listed all the qualities that I wanted Mr. Right to be like. So, in December of 2018, 2 months later, I reconnected with a crush from when I was in Zimbabwe. And you can also go to my podcast and listen to that episode. It's called Life is Better with Him in It, talking about a crush from 24 years ago. And it will tell you how we reconnected. But I just, the timing of it is right around the time I created a card in October. And I just put it on my nightstand and I would see it when I go to bed and then see it when I wake up. And so 2 months later, I reconnect with a guy that I actually had been searching for the last 24 years. And finally, we reconnect. And he had been searching for me too. So like I said, I'll leave you to listen to that episode to hear more stories. So those are some of the lessons that I have learned from doing this podcast is, just don't give up, don't lose hope. And, you can find love too. I'm not saying I've found it yet, but I'm certainly really excited that I'm in this relationship where I've reconnected with somebody from way, way back. So some of the opportunities that have come up, this podcast has not been up. I started in June 2018. So, it's not even a year yet. But I had an opportunity on February 13th to speak in front of an audience, my biggest one yet, 850 plus people, that I had to share how I started the podcast, why, and in sort of my love story as well. And this was with the Arizona Storytellers Project. So that was February 13th, which was a great opportunity for me to share my stories in front of that many people. And then the next day, which was Valentine's Day, February 14, 2019, I was featured in the Arizona Republic newspaper, which is a local newspaper in the Valley. And they shared about my podcast as well, and also my love story. And the writer, he is such a great writer. You should check out the article. And he titled it, "A Longing for Love Leads to Some Heartfelt Stories." And then he showcased my podcast and sort of my love story in it as well. So I encourage you to read it if you haven't. And some other opportunities, I've had people reach out to me to want to partner with me, to want to invite me to share my story with their audience. So, I'm beginning to set those dates and see where and how, if it fits into sort of my journey and where I want to be. So more to come on that. So what's next with Real Love, Real Stories? Well, I am going to continue sharing love stories as I've done, because that has been my goal from the beginning. So more love stories from couples, as well as sharing stories from single people, and sharing some things that will help those that want to fall in love and not lose hope. So there'll be more stories to come. And also, I'm hoping to do more live events locally and also in other cities. So I'm working on that, and there's a little bit more information to come in the very near future. So, and also for you, the listeners, if you have a love story, share it, because you never know who's going to find hope. After all, Maya Angelou said, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." So if you have a love story, share it. You never know, somebody's going to find hope and, and inspired by your story. So share it. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to go to iTunes. You can subscribe, rate, and review. And also you can go to my website, Real Love, Real Stories. You can find out more information, even look at the pictures of the couples that I interview, read the transcript from all the episodes, and even submit your own story. Thank you so much for your continued support. Till next time.